Hey guys, welcome back to Games of War. Happy Friday the 13th to all of you out there. Hope you can enjoy a nice horror flick tonight if you are able to. Today's episode is directly inspired by this amazing game right here, Alundra. This came out in '97, I believe. An action RPG, more of an action game with RPG elements. Beautiful hand-drawn 2D graphics, amazing anime cutscenes, a beautiful soundtrack. Great gameplay, man. A lot of puzzle solving, action based gameplay, dream walking. This was just a fantastic game that I absolutely fell in love with. I finished it over about a 3 week period, and this is the first time I ever finished Alundra. Which brings me to my topic. When the PlayStation was in its prime, I was a Saturn fan, and at that point, I was probably into gaming the least amount I have ever been. At that point, I think I was like a junior in high school. I graduated in '99, so I must have been like a junior or something around there in high school, and I was playing a lot of guitar then. I was playing guitar with buddies of mine, starting bands, talking to lots of girls, so gaming was definitely like the lowest priority then. And my parents at that point were going to buy me multiple consoles like when I was younger. So I had a Saturn, and that's what I stuck with. And Working Designs at that point was with the Saturn exclusively. So that was good enough for me. We only got a handful of games on the Saturn from them, and they were all so kind of spaced out. But Alundra was one that a buddy of mine had, because I always was aware of what was going on with the PlayStation, because I had a good friend of mine who was all about the PlayStation. He got all the new games that came out as they were, and I remember seeing them and just not really paying too much attention at that point. Like I said, with the music and playing guitar, I just wasn't focused on games, but I was aware of all the heavy hitters and RPGs that were coming out. And in the back of my mind, I kind of thought to myself, man, did I make a wrong decision here? I just went back to playing guitar, went back to hanging out with the girlfriend, whatever it was. But in finishing this game and enjoying it so much, it kind of got me thinking, man, I've got so many games here on the PlayStation that I really missed out on back in that heyday. And I'd like to discuss with you guys and kind of get your thoughts. Is there a time in gaming that you had a system and you kind of looked over from afar and saw this other console get all kinds of games released, and maybe not thought you made the wrong decision, but just missed out on a lot of games that you just didn't have the opportunity to play back then? Alundra was definitely an eye-opener for me to kind of, hindsight being 2020, to look back and think, man, I really missed out on a lot of games. So let's continue. This will probably blow some people's minds that follow the channel or talk to me. The Final Fantasy series. Now, this was synonymous with Nintendo and Super Nintendo up until this point. Quite possibly the most popular, well-recognized RPG series ever. This game right here totally changed role-playing games at the time. I remember this coming out and my buddies just being over the moon about this game. They just would not stop Final Fantasy VII. At the time, I had been playing this. I remember this was, I think, '98 at some point when all this hoopla, or it might have been a little before, but when everybody was talking about Final Fantasy VII and it was busy reinventing the whole genre, I was quietly playing Panzer Dragoon. And I wasn't upset at all. One ear and out the other about the Final Fantasy talk. I was enjoying this masterpiece. Still holds up very well, Panzer Dragoon. But this is a series, and I'm going to be honest with you guys right here. Final Fantasy 13 is the first Final Fantasy game that I played when it released from start to finish and completed it. Final Fantasy 13. I had played these games in the past, but I never owned them and got it like on day one and went through it from start to finish. So I completely missed the entire Final Fantasy series by owning a Saturn and not really paying attention at the time, not having a PlayStation. I remember going through some parts of Final Fantasy VII, but in RPG you can't just walk in the room one day with a buddy and sit down in the middle of the game and say, oh, this is crazy good. It didn't look that good to me because it was in the middle of the game. I had no idea what was going on. Now, I've gone back and completed these games, in recent years, but at the time when these were coming out and new, I had never played any of these Final Fantasy games. Crazily enough, I know it's insane, but I just didn't have the system, and I wasn't paying attention. Here we have a few more from Square, and I'll tell you guys, at this point when these games were coming out, I was playing Albert Odyssey, and I was playing Dragon Force. Albert Odyssey being a fantastic 2D, traditional as it comes RPG, hand-drawn, a very good game. Dragon Force kept me busy for over a year. I finished every campaign, and this game just had so much content on it. and I was ignoring all the big releases that were getting all the hype at the time. I mean, Square was on fire, Squaresoft, on the original PlayStation. And I remember games like Xenogears coming out, and I remember Vagrant Story. And to me, this is when Square was on fire. They were releasing epic, dark RPGs like Vagrant Story, and just mammoth, just insanely detailed in terms of story and development and plot. Xenogears, they don't pump out games like this today. They don't make these one-off RPGs that were just completely unique from each other and completely separate entities and so different, the tone being so dark in this game and like the sci-fi feel of this. These were games that my buddy once again was hyping up and playing. I just didn't pay any attention to it, and I really wish that I was playing these games back then because they are so good. This is Square at the top of their game. I remember this being kind of like compared to Zelda, Brave Fencer Musashi. This was like PlayStation's answer to Zelda at that time. I remember the comparisons, and this is something else that I missed out on that was really well done. I finished this game a few years back, and it's just so charming overall. A really good story. Gameplay, it's held up. It's kind of a hit or miss on this one for me a little bit, but it's a really cool, creative RPG that I would have loved to have played back then. You know, these were kind of pushing the envelope on the PlayStation and taking the genre to different heights, man. Not to say that Albert Odyssey and Dragon Force are bad games, because they're not, but these were epic on another level, just taking games in different directions, and I really regret not playing these back when they came out. I would have loved to have created some memories and some nostalgia from back then with these games, but sadly I missed out. I talked about my love for working designs being one of the reasons that I initially decided to go with the Saturn on top of my loyalty to Sega at the time. And working designs brought us a few more games on the Saturn. Iron Storm, which was really not my cup of tea in terms of setting. I'm not really a fan of like real life war RPGs. It's a good game, don't get me wrong, but Shining Wisdom was a game that I was really looking forward to at the time, kind of my saving grace, kind of an action RPG set in the Shining universe. This is probably the least loved of all the working designs games in the Saturn, for obvious reasons. I wasn't really a fan of the graphical style of this, but we did get Magic Knight Rayearth, and this was like one of I think the last game that came out in the Saturn. I'm not sure, it was delayed for so long. And when I got this game, I had finished it so quick within a few days. It was really a short game. And working designs after the Saturn had wrapped, they had gone on to the PlayStation, and they put out a couple of games that I really... Elemental Gearbolt, I absolutely adore. It's such a cool kind of mix-up of RPG and light gun game. Very unique. The storytelling is really cool. I love the animated scenes in this. And it's just something that you didn't see at the time. There was plenty of light gun shooters, but they were more on the arcadey side, you know, pick up and play, or games that you'd go sink some quarters in, because arcades were still thriving at that point. And Elemental Gearbolt kind of combined an RPG with light gun gameplay and multiple routes and stuff, and it was just really cool. Once again, it had that high gloss finish and a nice manual, really detailed, describing the world and story, and this was an awesome game. And then Vanguard Bandits was a really cool strategy RPG where you played as like giant mechs. And I remember my buddy being in love with this game and saying, you know, he did use this, rubbed it in my face, and was like, oh, you know, your company's over here on the PlayStation, now you've got no excuse. And at that point, I still wasn't sold yet on the PlayStation. It wasn't until Lunar and Lunar 2 came out on the PlayStation that I had no choice. But another couple of games that I really would have loved to experience back in the heyday that I just ignored. Now, Grandia is one of those games that I missed out on. I was really upset because I believe this had come out for the Saturn in Japan. And I remember looking at the diehard game fans and just drooling over this game and like thinking it was like the second coming of Lunar on the Sega CD. It had that vibe to it. And then when it got canceled on the Saturn for over here and it wasn't coming out, I was really upset. And then it got picked up on PlayStation and brought over here. And I was like, man, that almost pushed me to get the PlayStation at that point. But this was a really big blow for the Saturn for me personally at the time. But Grandia is a fantastic RPG on the PlayStation. I absolutely love the second one on the Dreamcast as well. I finished that one. But yeah, another RPG that I missed out on due to not having the right console back then, or having multiple consoles back then, I should say. Another series that stung quite a bit when I wasn't able to pick up the newest games in the franchise Breath of Fire were a couple of RPGs in the Super Nintendo that I actually rented with my stepbrother back in the day, and we finished these over multiple rentings. I remember racking up some serious late fees, and I absolutely love the Breath of Fire series. It's a shame what's come of it these days with mobile phones, games, and such. But in terms of traditional RPGs, hand-drawn battle systems are traditional as it gets. But being able to play as a character and like transform into these dragons and stuff, I absolutely love these games. Made a huge impression on me as a kid, and then to find out that the Breath of Fire series would continue on the PlayStation with 3 and 4, it was just it was really upsetting, and I never really admitted to anyone back in the day, or I probably haven't even admitted to myself, but the PlayStation really killed it with RPGs, man. I remember around the time that those had come out, I was busy playing Shining Force 3, which was, Sega. There would always be a system, or a game rather, that came out in the system that would kind of make everything else go away for what little time I was playing and gaming at that point. And Shining Force 3 was one of those games where this was just so good. Playing this with a buddy, this actually caused us to put the guitars down and really just pass back and forth playing this strategy RPG between the two of us. But it was a great time. But the Breath of Fire series is one that I'd love to see come back in proper form because they were just fantastic games, and I missed them both on the PlayStation. Played them years later, of course, and I absolutely love the series to death. But this is another series that I watched go by kind of through the looking glass, playing my Saturn. And I will say, as dominant as Square was on the original PlayStation, you can't knock off. I absolutely adored The Legend of Dragoon. I played this one the first time probably back in, I think it was 2004, I believe. I was when the PlayStation 2 was out. And I remember playing this and just being blown away by how epic this game was, man. I think this is like 4 discs long, I believe, yeah. 4 discs. This was like approaching Square territory of like epicness and the cutscenes and the party with all the different characters you could have and transforming into dragoons and these powers that you had. This was an RPG that just blew me away at the time, and I could only imagine playing this when it first came out. Man, Sony must have put a lot of money and a lot of work into this because it really shows. And I remember seeing this in the game magazines and thinking, Jesus Christ, not only is Square killing it, now we got Sony jumping into the ring and just, because this was getting praised at the time too. I was like, this is just fucking killing it, man. And this is a great game here, and one that I really drooled over in the magazines and wished I had a PlayStation at the time. But man, this is a great game. Alright guys, this is one of those videos that I didn't really intend on making, or I hadn't brainstormed any thoughts of this. Just after finishing Alundra, it got me thinking, man, how many great games that I missed out on back on the PlayStation because I only had a Saturn. And the sole purpose of this is to hear from you guys and get some good conversation going. Was there a generation back when you just had one console, whether it's because your parents wouldn't buy you multiple consoles and you couldn't afford it at the time, or you just were into other things at the time and you just had one system and that was enough for the time, but you were always kind of like looking over the fence at that other console and seeing all these games coming out. And, I just want to hear from you guys. What did you miss out on? We could do future genres in the future. We could do horror games maybe, or maybe platformers. Stuff you missed out on not having the console. So I got a big episode coming out this weekend that I've been working on for quite some time. That I'm excited to release. I got some good effort for that. And I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you for watching. As always, Games of War is nothing without you.